Good afternoon, stringers. This is Voodoo Stick Mod, and today we are going to be making a Dust Spirit stuffy. If you're a huge SG fan like I am, you will know that these pop up in movies such as My Neighbor Totoro, and I'm all about the Totoro. But these are like my second favorite character from that anime. You have a couple of options when you make these. You can add arms and legs, which is going to require you a few hoops. It's going to require 3 hoopings if you're making the 4x4 size like these. It's going to require 2 hoopings if you're doing any of the larger sizes. You can choose to make it without limbs like this one, and that's super simple to do. It's 1 hooping, it's a couple of colors. As you can see, the colors on it are basically black and white. If you're adding limbs, there's an extra color that's just to help with placement and tack down, but that's why I don't have a color sheet here. It's pretty much black and white. On the 4x4, it also has a tack down die line for and tack down for adding a hardware hanger if you want to. This is only on the 4x4 size. And like again, super simple. So I am going to make in this video the 6x10 size, and I'm going to do the limbs so that you can see how you would add those if you're going to go that route. If you're not, it's super simple to just don't make them and don't put them in. So the first thing I'm going to do, put my hooped stabilizer. I just hooped a layer of medium cutaway. I'm using black because the Dust Spirits are mostly black, so I just happen to have black stabilizer. You don't have to use black stabilizer, it won't be a problem. I just choose to use it for this because on the limbs, you're going to do the limbs very similar to how you're going to do a fob. So I'm going to put my hooped stabilizer into my machine and run the first color stop for the limb pattern. Okay, the die line for the limbs has been stitched. It's hard to see because it's black on black, but I'll kind of hold it up a little bit to be able to see it better. Now, I didn't go over fabrics. I am using felt for the limbs. You need to use a non-fraying fabric because these are not going to be turned. So I'm going to use felt. So I'm going to lay the first piece of felt over my die line, and then I am going to run the next color stop, which is just going to give me little registration lines for when you have to attach the limbs to the body so that you know how far outside of the seam you're going to place them. So it's just going to make it easier to line them up with the die lines. So I'm going to throw this on the machine again now that I've placed my first piece of felt, and I'm going to run the second color stop on the limb pattern. I'm not taping this down because this is felt. It's not going anywhere. You can use a little spray, sticky spray if you want. You can tape it down, you can pin it, whatever you want. I'm just going to throw it on, and this is literally going to take seconds to stitch, so it's not going to be on there very long. Then we will come back and we'll add the backing piece. I've now stitched all of the little die lines, registration lines, lining up lines, whatever you'd like to call them. Basically, you're going to line this up with a die line that's going to stitch on the actual round sprite, and that will help you to line this line up with the line that's going to be there so that you know how much of the limb to stick outside of the seam allowance. For now, though, I am going to flip my hoop over, okay, and I'm going to take another piece of felt and I'm going to lay it on the back. Now this one I am going to take down because we have this pesky thing called gravity that we need to counteract. So I am just going to grab a couple pieces of tape and I'm going to tape that down. Okay, I'm going to flip it back over And this, again, isn't going anywhere. You can tape it if you want. Now I'm going to put this back on the machine and I'm going to run the last color stop, which is going to stitch our bean stitch outline of the limbs. The limbs have now all been stitched. Again, hard to see because black on black, but there you go, you can see them. I'm going to flip this over and I'm going to take off these tapes. Okay, and then I'm going to pop this out of the hoop. I'm going to set that aside for a minute. And I am going to trim this down. Get rid of all this excess because it's easier to cut it out if you get rid of a lot of this extra stuff. Okay. All right. Now I'm going to just very quickly rough cut these apart. Try not to get too close to any one of them, just so that I have edges to work with. Okay. All right, now I'm going to trim them all the way around. Just like you would a fob, you want to stay about 1/8 of an inch or so away from the edges. You do not want to cut at the red line that I stitch here. That's your placement. Notice how I trimmed it here to get that, to just past the very end of the black. I'm just taking nice long cuts, and I'm turning the felt, not the scissors, as much as I can. Now the toes and the fingers are a little trickier. So I'm going to do those a little bit differently there. And you don't have to cut this exactly the way that I do. You cut it in whichever way, using whichever types of scissors are the best for you. Trim. All right, that is one all cut out. Now I'm going to cut out the other 3. All of our limbs are cut out. We have 2 arms. We have 2 legs. Okay, now we're going to set those aside because we don't need those for right now. And we are going to grab our hoop and we are going to hoop up another piece of medium cutaway. I wouldn't suggest tearaway for this because the eyes are pretty dense on these guys and you don't want the tearaway to come apart and it basically turns to pulp while you're stitching, and then you have shifty eyes. So now I'm going to set up put in the file for the actual Sprite. I have hooped my medium cutaway. This design has 5 color steps, and we're going to run color step 1 to do our die line. The die line has been run, and now I'm going to place my first piece of fabric, and I am choosing to use a long furred minky on this. You can use whatever you want. I'm just going to let you know that felt is a lot harder to turn than things like minky or fleece. Cotton woven would be another one that would be difficult to turn, so I probably wouldn't recommend doing something like that. You could use a regular minky, you could use a fleece. You can use whatever you want. I'm just letting you know that certain things are harder to turn once you have to get there. Now I'm going to lay some of this plasticky water-soluble stabilizer on top, and I'm just going to pin all of this in place over this die line. Okay, now normally I tell you to pin the ever-living daylights out of things, but on these, the stitching is pretty concentrated right in the center, so I haven't noticed any issues with just pinning on the 4 corners. You just want to make sure that your pins are well outside of your die line on the back. And if you want to use tape, you can use tape. If you want to use some temporary sticky spray for putting the fabric down, that's fine too, but I found that the pins work well for me. So now I'm going to put this on my machine, and I'm going to run the next 2 color steps 2 and 3, and those are going to do the eyes and the placement lines for the limbs. So do color steps 2 and 3, and then come back and I'll show you how to add the limbs. Now that the details, the eyes, and the placement lines for the limbs are all stitched, we're going to do some things to get the limbs ready. All right, now this is going to seem very odd, but first I want to take my stabilizer and just trim the stabilizer, the WSS, up to here, because it's a lot easier to actually, I'm just cutting a slit in the WSS up to the point where the placement lines are, because it's easier to place these down and stitch them if I don't pull this WSS off, because black on black is kind of hard to see. Okay, so now I need a couple of legs and a couple of arms. So I have legs, okay, and I want the legs to be like this, but they need to be on the inside. Okay, so I just need to flip them over, and I'm just going to take my placement and just make sure that the placement is kind of outside of where the actually I'm gonna tape it down on the inside here. Okay, all right, so now my placement line is just outside of the black placement line there. Okay, now I'm going to do the same thing with the other one. I'm just kind of seeing where that is. I'm placing it down, and then I'm going to tape this down here. Okay, now I need some arms. Now arms, you can choose to do both up, like, yeah, both down. I don't know, maybe he's dancing, or one up and one down. I think we're gonna go with this one down and this one up. So again, I need to flip these around so that they're facing the inside. Okay, and I'm going to tape that one in place there. And then this one, okay, that one's gonna go there like that. Okay, so now they're all taped with the limbs to the inside. Now I'm gonna put this back on the machine, and it's going to tack all of these down, okay? And if something seems like it's kind of gonna maybe be in the way, I'm gonna just put that like that. For now, I'm gonna tape this one up here. And I'm gonna tape this one down here. And it's mostly just because my machine's gonna go around and I don't want anything to get caught. Now, if you're really concerned about things getting caught, you can lay another piece of WSS over this just to keep everything covered, so that hopefully the machine doesn't snag something with the foot. But I'm going to put this back on my machine and I'm going to run color stop 4 and then I'll come back. We are back with tacked down limbs. Now I will say on this one, the only reason that the colored placement line is facing up and all the others are down on here is because I chose to put this arm facing down. Had I chose to put the arm facing up, it would have been like all the others. So what I need to do now is I need to peel up all these random tape, and then now I'm going to pull off this WSS because I don't need it on here anymore. And that's why I did this, because otherwise the limbs are stuck inside of the stabilizer and you have to try to pull them through a hole of the WSS. Okay, now what I need to do is I need to make sure all these limbs are inside, okay, in a way that is not going to get them caught on the outer stitching. So I'm just kind of rolling and twisting and folding them up. Now you can take tape and tape this down, okay? But I have found that for the most part, felt works pretty good at just being squashed like that. And then I'm going to take my other piece of fabric, pretty side down, okay? And I'm going to lay it on top, and then I'm going to pin this in place, okay? And because I squashed all that stuff in the middle, it's going to stay squashed up under this stuff. So it shouldn't be an issue with it getting caught anywhere. And okay. Looks like I misplaced a pin. All right, so now I'm just getting this all on here. Okay, so now that is all pinned and that's all squashed. All the limbs are squashed up in the middle. Now I'm going to put this on the machine and I'm going to run the last color stop, which is 5, and it's going to stitch most of the way around, leaving a turning hole at the bottom. And then we'll come back and we'll finish this all up. So it's all stitched, so I can take these pins off now. And we can unhoop it, because that was the last thing we needed to do there. Okay, that away. Okay, now again, I'm not cutting any of the fabric just yet. I'm just trimming away a lot of this excess stabilizer so that it makes it easier to work with here. So now there's a turning hole right here that's open. If I flip it over, you can't really see any better, but it's like right down here at the bottom. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my scissors and I'm just going to trim up at an angle to each side, but making sure I don't want to snip through the stitching. I just want to go right up to it. So that has given me tabs. Okay. And I am just going to flip the tabs up out of the way, and I'm going to cut off most of the stabilizer tab because that's just going to get in the way when I have to sew it together. So now all I have to do is trim around this, leaving about a 1/4 inch or so. Okay, now that I've got my big old arm out of the way there, and I'm just carefully trimming around. Okay. You're going to hit some resistance when you get to the limb, parts that are sticking out. Okay, and then when you get back down here, you just want to make sure you don't cut into your tab, because you'll need to tuck that in later in order to make a nice clean edge to sew up. So now we just need to turn them inside out. So I'm going to reach in, and I'm just going to carefully pull out that wad of limbs that was all kind of bundled up in the middle. I don't want to pull on them too hard. And then I'm just going to carefully push the rest out. And then if it's not really pushing out, you can use a chopstick or other blunt end item to just kind of push out the edges. Okay. Now, I'm not going to do this right now, because this is the next part's pretty easy. You're going to fill him, stuff him with stuffing as full as you would like him to be. Then you're going to tuck in his turning tabs like so. And then you're going to whip stitch or ladder stitch this shut. Now, I am not doing that because it is really hard to ladder stitch and make it be something you could see on camera, because this stuff is so fluffy anyways. But I think you all get the idea that now, if you don't want to stuff him, I will say that these guys are awfully freaking cute just flat like this. So you could just stitch it up if you really wanted to. But otherwise, all you need to do, the only things left to do are to stuff him and stitch the opening closed, and you have made a dust sprite. Super, super simple. So you can get this file at www.stringtheoryfabricart.com. And if you have any questions about it, or would like more information about how to do things, if you get stuck on something, I'm almost always online on Facebook in the Facebook group, the String Theory Fabric Art fan group, which you can find through a search. So if you're not in the group already, I suggest you check it out. But hopefully you enjoyed this little tutorial, and you can get on with making a bunch of these to put all over the place, because they are super cute.